Hello everybody, I'm back with another video finally, and hopefully this will clear up some things for people or help them know what direction to look in. Let's put it that way. I don't claim to know everything, and I'm just a person, and I'm just learning just like you are. So this one I titled, Who is Your Real Father and What is God's Real Name? All the new modern scripture studies has people now calling the Old Testament God as Yahuwah. Who is our real father? That is the question I'm going to ask here. It's a tough question. One person's little video actually got me started on this in thinking, well, do I really have the right name? Am I using the right name? It was his sincerity, and I don't even know his name. He posted on one of my little replies on the videos, and I went and watched the video, and I was pretty much blown out of the water by what he said. So I started searching again about the name. If Yahuwah is his name, then why is Yahuwah not in the New Testament? That's a big question. I'm going to attempt to show what I found and believe to be the truth. This was very difficult for me, and I started looking at this because someone sent me that little video, like I said. I had no idea where these questions would take me, but once you see the truth, you must acknowledge it and ask the Father to help you understand. So this is an attempt to help anyone searching for the truth. And I have always tended to look at God as a father figure. So that maybe that's just upbringing, I don't know, but I have some reasons for that, and I'll get into that later. Don't knee jerk on me. Sometimes the simple answer is the correct one, but we've been so ingrained and so taught so hard, it's hard to break away and actually see the truth because we've got this cognitive dissonance. The word Father is used 387 times in the New Testament. The word Yahuwah 0 times. Yet the Son of Man said he revealed the Father. If Yahuwah is not used, that could not be who was revealed. I started searching this, trying to figure out why Yahuwah, if he's God, did this Son of Man not use his name? What I realized was a shock to me, and we've been totally deceived. Most people tote around a Bible and will tell you it's the infallible Word of God, yet they never have really studied the words. I am called by many names in the comments such as Satan, witch, deceiving spirit, just to name a few. But what people do not realize is a search for God must come from a sincere place in the heart, not some sense of pride to look correct or just trying to fit in with the masses. I spent my entire life looking for the truth of who God is, and it's led me to some things that were totally wrong in the past, and I'm the first one to admit that. And I'm not worried about saying that, since he showed me these things were wrong. If you look at my earliest videos, it's easy to see how I've gone through like a progression of truth as Father showed me different things. People sometimes are not wrong, they're simply at a different level of understanding. That's why I rarely get mad when people criticize me until they start just blatantly calling nasty names, and then I know their heart is not sincere in what they're saying. Basically, what I'm asking you to do is don't knee-jerk on this, what I'm showing you, but think about it. Take it to the scriptures and then study it out for yourselves. Don't take my word for anything. Don't take man's word for anything. Pray to Father. Tell him to open your mind to the scriptures, and then just dig in and look for yourself, because he will guide you. He'll take you through all the little things that go on. He'll show you. If you're sincere and you're really looking, he's going to help you. Here's a scripture I came across that really blew my mind when I started analyzing it. It's John 4:21 through 23. Jesus said to her, "Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem will you worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we know. For salvation is what we have, the Jews, in our books. But when I analyze that word, it's away from. And when you look at the morphology of that word, it's away from. It's to denote a change from one place to a condition to another. Not from that person, but away from. I went down to the morphology because this is disassociation or separation from is what the word really means. So that was a big one for me. And then the next verse says, "But the hour is coming and is now here when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. For the Father is seeking such people to worship him." Well, that verse clearly does not say Yahuwah is seeking people to worship him. It says the Father. I was like, okay, why does it say the Father then? If he had meant Yahuwah, he would have said Yahuwah. So what is this area where we have all this stuff coming from? It's actually the Leviathan area. It's a Canaanite region, and it refers to a group of ancient Semitic religions practiced by the Canaanites living in ancient Levant. And it's from way back in the Bronze Age and the Common Era on forward. They had a great number of deities in a four-tier hierarchy headed by El and Asherah, and were worshipped by the followers of the Canaanite religion. Well, if you look at the word Levi in Hebrew, down here at the bottom left side, I've got it boxed off in red, you'll notice that the root word for Leviathan is Levi. That's because Levi is actually a follower of Leviathan. This is all the names of deities they had for that. They had El, they had the Asherah, Astarte, Baal, whole bunch of them. Mot is actually a deity of death. Even Yahweh is listed under there. But there are several names, not just one name. In Matthew 15:22, he says, "Behold, a Canaanite woman from the region came out and was crying, 'Have mercy on me, O Master, son of David.'" And I use master because that's actually what Kyrios means, is used in that word. "My daughter is severely oppressed by a demon." But he did not answer her a word, and his disciples came and begged him, "Send her away, for she is crying out after us." He answered, "I was only sent for the lost sheep of the house of Israel." But she came and knelt before him. "Master, help me." And he answered, "It is not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs." Well, everybody thinks that he was being mean or something. When he used the word dogs, he was referring to this specific area of a person from this area. I don't think he was referring to them in a derogatory light. Because look at Luke 16:20 through 22. "And at his gate was laid a poor man named Lazarus, covered with sores, who desired to be fed, what fed from the rich man's table. Moreover, even the dogs came and licked his sores. The poor man died and was carried away by the angels to Abram's side. The rich man also died and was buried." So he's telling you something about it, the difference between two types of people there. But he's also telling you who he was taken to. He was taken to Abram's side, and the dogs were licking his sores. And that's kind of metaphorically speaking that they were being mean to him and stuff. Actually, also named a Canaan dog from that same region. I just thought that was ironic. And that's what he looks like. They've survived in the desert region for thousands of years. So that was another thing why he was using that name, because they've been named that for thousands of years. Here's another one that struck me. Most of y'all probably don't know. I've been studying Hebrew for probably a year now, going through the Old Testament and breaking down every verse. Just break them down, look at them, tear them apart. And what I've noticed is a lot of things are mistranslated. Like this one in Numbers 17:4, where this is after Korah's rebellion, and it's talking about the priest took, and what it actually says, okay, what we have in our English text is Eleazar the priest took the basin censers, wherein that they were burned, and offered, and they made broad plates for a covering of the altar. When you see that word plates for, see how it's lighter? This is a direct copy from the King James Version on my eSword. When you look at that, because it's light and it's kind of italicized, it's leaning, that means those words actually are not there, but they just inserted them trying to make it sound right. I took it down here and broke it down. And what it actually says is, and Eleazar took the priest. So you would actually read that the priest Eleazar, you from the destruction of the ruin, the snake is what's actually there in Hebrew, that they sacrificed. The serpents, and he beat and stamped them out and stretched them out, covering the altar. So what is actually said in that verse is they took snake skins and covered the altar. But that's not what we have in English, and you would never get that from that. So there's a lot of things in the Old Testament that really will try your mind. If I walked in and saw an altar covered in snake skins, I'd probably freak out. I'd be like, oh, I'm out of here. This is some kind of satanic worship. Okay, we're going to keep looking. Stay with me to the end of this. I want you to hear everything. This is the actual Hebrew word, and I pulled it down here. I put it in a Hebrew to English translator so y'all can see that it's snake and serpent. I'm not trying to pull the wool over nobody's eyes. You can do this yourself. You can go on, do it Hebrew, You'll get $1 a month. I pay for that. But you can take a word, throw it into the translator, and you'll get 4 different definitions from 4 different sources. And you'll also get the modern source, which I'll show y'all later on in another video, how that can be really eye-opening. This little standard thing here, banner, is from that region, and it has snakes on it. And there are a lot of altars and stuff from that time period when this would have been that has snakes, like that's around 1300 BC when Moses was born. And this altar would have been around 1393 BCE. So this is the same time period as Moses that we're seeing these serpent banners and standards and stuff in archaeology. This is interesting too. Can the world be Satan's and Yahuwah's at the same time? And also, why would Yahuwah want to wipe out all the nations and only save one? I'm going to start on the right over here because this is the main point of this whole slide. Luke 4:5-6. And the devil, taking him up on a high mountain, showed him all the reigns of the world in a moment of time. And the devil said to him, All this authority I shall give to you in their esteem, for it has been delivered to me, and I give it to whomever I wish. If then you worship before me, all shall be yours. So here we have the devil taking the Son of Man up on this high mountain and offering them everything. When we read Psalms, the earth is Yahuwah's, and the fullness thereof, the world and those who dwell therein. So he's definitely saying that this world belongs to Yahuwah. Now let's look at how he's going to destroy all the nations. For I am with you, declares Yahuwah, to save you, though I make a complete end of all the nations where I have scattered you. Yet I do not make a complete judgment end of you. But I shall reprove you in judgment, and by no means leave you unpunished. In Jeremiah 46:28, do not fear, O Jacob. And Jacob actually means supplanter or heel holder, my servant. So that's his servant, declares Yahuwah. For I am with you, though I make a complete end of all the nations to which I have driven you, yet I do not make a complete end of you. But I shall reprove you in right ruling, and by no means leave you unpunished. Okay, so he's going to wipe out everybody else except for Jacob, but he's going to leave, but he's not going to let them go unpunished. He's still going to punish them. Okay, Isaiah 34:2. For the displeasure of Yahuwah is against all the nations, and his wrath is against all their divisions. He shall put them under the ban. He shall give them over to the slaughter. So he's going to slaughter everybody on the earth, except for that one nation. Amos 9:8. Look, the eyes of the Master Yahuwah are on the sinful reign, and I shall destroy it from the face of the earth, except that I do not completely destroy the house of Jacob, declares Yahuwah. So again, here we are. He's going to destroy everybody except for Jacob. Just hold that in your mind as we go through the rest of this. This is the same thing, but here's some more verses I wanted to go over. Nahum 1:5. The mountains quake before him, the hills melt, the earth heaves before him, the world and all who dwell in it. So here we are. Yahuwah is being over the whole world and everybody that dwells in it. Matthew 13:38. The field is the world, and the good seed is the sons of the kingdom, and the weeds are the sons of the evil one. So he's telling us something there in Matthew 13. Matthew 16:26. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? And what shall a man give in return for his soul? Psalm 17:14. From men by your hand, O Yahuwah, from men of the world, whose portion is in this life, you fill their womb with treasure. They are satisfied with children, and they leave their abundance to their infants. So he's saying that their portion is in this life, not the life to come. In John 12:31, now is the judgment of this world, and now will the ruler of this world be cast out. So there's a specific ruler he was talking about in John 12 that's going to be cast out. Here's another Jewish snake altar, and on the right you see the Kabbalah tree of life. Now a lot of people say, well, all rabbis are not Kabbalah people. They're not into Kabbalah, but many, many, many of them are. I was listening to Tanakh Talk not long ago, and Rabbi Singer called the callers shells. If people understood what that meant in Kabbalah terms, that is a very derogatory thing. When you call somebody a shell, that means they don't have a soul, that they just go back to the dirt, they're lower than the animals. It is a really rude thing to call somebody. I had mentioned that on one of my groups, and they said, well, maybe he was calling them a shell. You know, a lot of people call people shills nowadays. And I said, that's still not a good thing to do to somebody calling in. And these people were groveling at his feet, asking him questions. and he was calling them either a shell or a shield. I think it was a shell. In the book of Numbers, Moses mounted the bronze serpent on a pole as a cure against the bite of the seraphim or the burning ones. And the phrase in Numbers 21:9, a serpent of bronze, is a wordplay on Nakash and the bronze, which are closely related in the Hebrew text. But almost everything has to do with serpents. Moses' rod turns into a snake. I just showed y'all where they're doing snake skins on the altar, serpent on the pole. There's just a lot of stuff about snakes. And then when you see the Kabbalah tree, this is a real Hebrew, ancient one, and you can see the serpent twined all the way to the top. His head's at the top. Everything dealing with Moses from Yahuwah has to do with serpents, and that's true. Then in Exodus 4:1, then Moses answered, "But behold, they will not believe me or listen to my voice, for they will say, Yahuwah did not appear to you." And Yahuwah said to him, "What is in your hand?" And he said, "A staff." And he said, "Throw it on the ground." So he threw it on the ground, and it became a serpent. And Moses was scared and ran from it, because our natural instinct is to run from serpents. Numbers 21:8. And Yahuwah said to Moses, "Make a fiery serpent and set it on a pole. And every one who is bitten, when he sees it, he shall live." So Moses made a bronze serpent, and he set it on a pole. And if the serpent bit anyone, he would look at it in the bronze serpent and would live. This is another verse that caught my attention, Luke 16:29. This was one of the verses that made me feel like that we were supposed to be following the Old Testament law. But when I started analyzing the Greek, I don't think that's what it was saying at all. It says, in English, we have, Abraham said unto him, "They have Moses and the prophets, let them hear them." That's like, I don't listen to Moses and the prophets. But when you actually look at the Greek, it actually says, Abraham said unto him, they had Moses and the prophets. They listened to them. So that's a totally different meaning. Akusmi is the verb to listen, and in the tense that it's in, it's past tense, definitely. When I first put it in a translator, I was like, I wonder if that's accurate or not. So I went and pulled up all the tenses of that verb, and yep, it's accurate. They listened to them. It is definitely past tense, and then I verified that with Matthew 11:2 and Matthew 2:3. So I'm showing you these things because I want you to know what links I went to make sure that I was not wrong on this. Now, you can write this down, and I'll tell you to do that and go look it up, because this is important. All these little details make a big difference in what's being said, because this was what big verse that pushed me to be following all those laws in the Old Testament. This is the only word that we have in both the Old Testament and the New Testament that match when you put them in a translator. What I'm saying there, if you take Yahuwah from the Old Testament and put it into Greek, it does not come out as Kyrios, as what they have. And this word, theos, if you take it and put it in a translator, it does come out to Eloi, which actually means the divine or immortal. It's a descriptive term, not really a name, if that makes any sense. But we have it translated in the New Testament as God, and in the Old Testament as God. But it doesn't, it's a generic term for divine or immortal. I looked at all the words translating from the ancient Hebrew to the Greek, back and forth, to see if they matched up and everything. That's how I came up with a lot of this. The Eloi is synonymous with the theos, like I just showed you. But Yahuwah is not synonymous with any of the terms in the New Testament. And I showed you here in the Greek, in the middle left, see this right here? That is the two words side by side. And you can see how this Greek word does not match when you translate it. And they tell you theos is a deity, a supreme divinity, or magistrate by Hebraism, exceedingly God or godly. And Kyrios, which is the other word used in the New Testament, means Lord or Master, and the term Kyrios is used in the modern Greek language as equivalent to the English term Mr. or Master or Sir. Mr. Smith would be an example. So neither one of those terms are actually theos nor Kyrios. Neither one are the name of a deity. The Gospel of John seldom uses Kyrios to refer to Jesus during the ministry, but does so after the resurrection. They made a big point of that the Gospel of Mark never applied the term Kyrios in a direct reference to the Jesus, unlike Paul, who uses it 163 times. When Mark uses Kyrios, it's in reference to, they say, Yahuwah or God. But that can't be, because it simply means master. I think a lot of things have been misconstrued with all this. I just went through, and this was a place I pulled all the places they use Kyrios, so we could look at how it's used in the New Testament. Y'all can read that if you want to, but it's just pulled out of a textbook. The L word cannot be father, as they have so many different meanings. I went through all that. You got Elohim, which means rulers, judges, divine ones, angels, gods, goddess, godlike ones, works with special processions of God, can be the true God, God. Then you go to Eloi, God or a false God. Can God also be a false God at the same time? I don't think so. Then it goes, and I pulled them here, see the plural of, and then I went to the next number. Then you go from Eloi down to the next one. It says it's from 410, L. Look at all this stuff. Godlike one, mighty men, men of rank, mighty heroes, angels, God, false God, the one true God, mighty things in nature, strength, or power. And it says the shortened version of it is H352. Go over here, and it's a ram. A ram is in sacrifice. A ram skinned and dried for a tabernacle. A pillar, a doorpost, jams. This cannot be Father's name. I don't see it. It just doesn't work. They've got too many meanings, and I'm using Brown, Driver, Briggs definitions because he's probably the most accurate of any of them. I like it better than even Strong's because he breaks it down like this. And this reference is from Ernest Klein. This is the rabbinical Hebrew. This is where they get that from. According to it, Elohim is gods, God, super beings, supernatural beings, or judges. And then they have the little apostrophe looking thing, which they say is an abbreviation for Yahuwah, or the Tetragrammaton. Then you get down here to the proper name of God, and they say that the pronunciation and literal meaning of the Tetragrammaton is unknown. So they were literally in their own rabbinical dictionary saying they don't even know what the word means, which is not true. They do know. I pulled this verse to show you what I'm talking about theos being immortal or divine. Luke 20:37 through 39. I never did really understand this unless they were calling all three, Abram, Isaac, and Jacob, deities before, until I actually realized what this word actually means. He said, but that the dead are raised, even Moses showed in the passage about the bush where he calls, and the word thee is not there in the Greek interlinear, and that would be actually master, not Yahuwah. The immortal Abram and the immortal Isaac and the immortal Jacob, because of is not there. Now he is not immortal of the dead, but of the living, for all live to him. Then some of the scribes answered, Teacher, you have spoken well. He was talking about, it's about whether they're still alive or not, whether they are just dead corpses or whether they're alive. It's not talking about him being the God of so-and-so, because of is not there. And that threw me off for a long time. But that passage cleared up a whole lot for me, because the Kyrios being master and then the theos being the divine or immortal is a total different take on this, because it means, I think it was meant to mean immortal, basically, because they can't all be gods, and there's no of there. And if you read it any other way, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 gods in that sentence, and that can't be. In my mind, it just can't be. And they use Damus, which shoes it in the Latin because it means divine, a divine person or immortal person, same thing. And it's like Kyrios, it can be a lord of a manor also, or clergy even, or a master or title. So it's not a name. Kyrios is not a name. I hope this is making sense. I looked at Elohim. There's another way we could even look at Elohim. The exact spelling is like when you have two of something. So it could be two Allah instead of one. And I thought that's really strange because it is plural. It says, let us make man and Adam in our image. So it's definitely, I looked that up, and those are definitely plural. There I'm showing you the prefixes and suffixes showing that it's plural. So it could be two. But I really think that Elohim means El of the seas. And the seas is actually plural, but it's only one person. And that's my take on it. Everybody has an opinion on it. When I took Allah in Arabic and throw it in, I come out with the Elohim in a translator. And it often has the in front of it. So Elohim is definitely a name, if that makes any sense. Like I said, I think it means, if you break it down, the Aleph, Lamed, El of the seas, if you were to break it down into syllabuses, different things. And some say it means the living God. Here's an interesting thing. If you take Yahuwah in Hebrew and flip it upside down and squash it together, it's actually Allah in Arabic. In Rabbinic Judaism, they consider 7 names of God as being holy. El, Elohim, Yahuwah, Adonai, Eliasher, Elah, Shaddai, and Sabaoth. They consider all those to be sacred names. And when we think about what the Son of Man said, he said, you have one Father, call no man Father, because you have one Father in heaven. You don't have 7 different ones. So there's something bad wrong right there. Okay, here we get into some really stuff that really blew my mind. El is a Phoenician or Eutharic deity in the Canaanite world, in a Proto-Semitic, and it was a god of the Amorites in the ancient Canaanite religions of the Eastern Semitic, the Mesopotamian early dynastic period. So El was a pagan deity with statues and all that stuff. That doesn't make any sense. So why are the Jews worshiping a pagan deity from the Canaanites, the ancient Canaanites? And you can see all the different names: Elyon, El Shaddai, Eliam, Adon Lim, Turael, Abu Banai, El Eli, Abu Adamain. I mean, it's just like all these different names. They come for the same deity. El was both a generic word for any god and a special name or title of a particular god. So that could be used in that reference, much like we say there are not many gods. El is listed as the head of many pantheons in some of the Canaanite and Urific sources. El played a role as a father of gods of creation. However, because the word sometimes refers to a god other than the great god El, it is frequently ambiguous as to whether El followed by another name or the great god El. It's just mess. The Semitic root, Allah, in Hebrew text, the word is interpreted as being Semitically singular for God in many biblical commentaries. But they don't really know. And it's used to differentiate between Yahwehist, Elohist, and Deuteronomist as a priestly source. Like, what kind of priest are you? Well, I'm a El priest, or I'm a Yah priest. That doesn't make any sense to me. Let's look at Elyon. Elyon can mean a deity, or the Most High, or it can be referring to the position of something, or a location of something, not just a name, which could completely change many of the sentences we have. Look at Deuteronomy 32:8. The Most High divided the nations their inheritance when he separated the sons of Adam. He set the bounds of the people according to the numbers of the children of Israel. I broke that down, each Hebrew word, and it actually says, in the dividing of the inheritance, the uppermost people, or goim, separated my son Adam to be set over the border or boundary of the nations, to number or score with a mark my son, who will rule as a mighty one, or God, questionably God. That's what it actually says in the Hebrew. And that's looking at every pronoun, every prefix, every suffix. They've just really done a number on this. Because you can see as an adjective, it means the upper or higher region. And I think in that terms, it's talking about the upper people, or the upper goim. And I want to look at Matthew 10, verse 24 through 28. A taught one is not above his teacher, nor a servant above his master. It is enough for the taught one to become like the teacher, or the servant like the master. If they have called the master of the house Beelzebub, how much more those of his household? Therefore do not fear, for whatever is covered shall be revealed, and whatever is hidden shall be made known. What I say to you in the dark, speak in the light, and what you hear in the ear, proclaim from the housetop. And do not fear those who can kill the body, but are unable to kill the being, but rather fear him who is able to destroy both being and body in Gehenna. Then I compared that to Isaiah 10. And it shall be, when Yahuwah has performed all his work on the Mount Zion and on Jerusalem, that I shall punish the fruit of the greatness of the heart of the sovereign of Ashur, and the boasting of his haughty looks. For he has said, by the power of my hand I have done it, and by my wisdom, for I have been clever. I removed the boundaries of the people, and have robbed their treasuries, and I have put the inhabitants like a strong one. And my hand finds the riches of the people like a nest, and I have gathered all the earth like forsaken eggs are gathered, and there is none who moved his wing or opened his mouth a peep. Would the axe boast itself over him who chops with it, and the saw exalt over him who saws with it, the rod waving those who lift it up, as a staff lifting up that which is not wood? Therefore, Master Yahuwah of hosts sends leanness among the fat ones, and under his esteem he kindles a burning like the burning of a fire. And the light of Israel shall be for a fire, and his set apart ones for a flame, and it shall burn and devour his weeds and his thorn bushes in one day, and consume the esteem of the forest, and his fertile field, both life and flesh. And they shall be as when a sick man wastes away, and the remains of the trees shall be so few in number that a child records them. So when we compare the New Testament to the Old Testament, it is Yahuwah that he's telling us to be afraid of, because he can destroy both soul and body. So that's kind of upsetting to think about. And next we look at 2 Kings 1 through 10. And after the death of Ahab, Moab rebelled against Israel. Now Ahaz fell through the lattice in the upper chamber in Samaria and lay sick, and he sent his messengers telling them, Go and inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron, whether I shall recover from this sickness. But the angel of Yahuwah said to Elijah the Tishbite, Arise and go up and meet the messengers of the king of Samaria, and say to them, Is it because there is no God in Israel that you are going to inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron? Now therefore, says Yahuwah, you shall not come down from the bed to which you have gone up, and you shall surely die. So Elijah went. The messengers returned to the king, and he said to them, Why have you returned? And they said to him, There came a man to meet us, and said to us, Go back to the king who sent you, and say to him, Thus says Yahuwah, It is because there is no God in Israel that you are sending to inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron. Therefore you shall not come down from the bed to which you have gone up, you shall surely die. He said to them, What kind of man was he who came to meet you and told you these things? And they answered him, He wore a garment of hair and a belt of leather about his waist. And he said, It is Elijah the Tishbite. And the king sent him to the captain of the 50 and his 50. And he went to Elijah, who was sitting on the top of the hill, and said to him, O man of God, the king says, Come down. But Elijah answered the captain of the 50, If I am a man of God, let fire come down from heaven and consume you and your 50. And then fire came down from heaven and consumed him and his 50. So being considered a man of God was when fire came down and burned up 50 people. Now let's look at Luke 9:53 through 56. And they received him not, because his face was of one going to Jerusalem. And when his disciples James and John had seen this, they said, Master, wilt thou that we command fire to come down from the heaven and consume them? And turning, he rebuked them and said, You know not what spirit you are. The Son of Man came not to destroy souls, but to save. And they went to another town. So here we see the reverse opposite of what we see in the Old Testament. That fire coming down from heaven in the Old Testament is Yahuwah, and then fire coming down in the New Testament is a bad spirit. So that's kind of scary. And they actually left him. A lot of people don't realize this. They broke chapter 9 and 10 into two parts, and James and John left him, and then immediately in 10, when you start reading at the top, and most people read like a chapter at a time, they don't catch it. But then he went and chose new disciples after that, probably because their spirit was bad. Our Strong's and the Brown Driver Briggs tells us that Yahuwah means the existing one. Now, look at how Yahuwah is spelled here. See that word right there? That is Yahuwah. It's a Yod, Hey, Vah, Hey. Now, what is the existing one up here? Got nothing to do with it. Not even the same word. So this teaching that it means the existing one is not true. It doesn't. There is a word for the existing one. There is a word for existing. And it's not this word at all. The Masoretes from about the 6th to the 10th century worked to reproduce the original text of Hebrew. I replaced the vowels of the name of Yahuwah with the vowel signs of the Hebrew words for Adonai or Elohim. Latin-speaking Christian scholars substituted the Y, which did not exist in Latin, with an I or a J, of which exists in Latin as a variant of I. Thus the Tetragrammaton became the artificial Latinized Yahweh. Then that name was used and spread through medieval Europe, and the initial letter J was pronounced according to the local vernacular language, which was rather like Latin. So we get all these different variants where man has distorted and changed things. And look at the vowel points, how different they are on the same word. And when you look at the ancient manuscripts, I'm going to show you that too, there is no vowel point changes. This is where it gets scary. When you take the word Yahuwah, or Yahovah, or however you want to say it, or Yahweh, and you actually look at what is there, you have Havah and you have a Yod. Okay, when you're learning Hebrew, the Yod on the beginning of the root word gives you the action of a verb. So when you put it would be he will or they will when you put a Yod at the beginning. And since there's no prefix, it will be he will. And then Havah means cause to fall, ruin, mischief, perverse thing, naughty, wickedness, destruction, those kind of things. It does not mean existing one. That is a totally different word. Here's some examples of where Havah is used. It's used in Isaiah 47:11, how to charm away, and disaster. It's used as disaster and mischief. Most of the time it's used again in Ezekiel 7:26 and twice in 7:26. And it's either translated as disaster or mischief. And they say it means ruin or disaster in the Strong's Concordance. I went outside of that. I went to Abram Publishing and looked at their meaning. They say that I am up here is not the same. That's Hayah. And the Havah has a Vav in it instead of a Yod in the middle between the two Hays right there. See the difference? This is a little short, and this one's long all the way to the bottom. That is not the same word. The verb hayah to them, when they're looking at a lot more sources than I have, the older version of the verb to act defyingly or to appear to fall. As a noun, it literally means a bad kind of desire or lust or ruin or destruction. So it describes destruction, ruin, or calamity. Now when we look at what the name is, in Hebrew, it's your reputation. So that is scary, that's what that word means. Now what did the Son of Man really say to us? Enter by the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the way easy that leads to destruction. You could literally put in Yahuwah as a noun, and that is that it would work. And those who enter by it are many. So that's a very scary thought, that this word as a noun matches what he said up here. So I looked at it's not a verb, and it's not from Hayah. It's a totally different word, Yehovah, Havah, and it just does not match. There's no way around it. It can also mean fall out, actually, but that doesn't really, they're not even spelled the same. And they put the self-existing or eternal, and then they say it's the Jewish national name of God. So it's a name they picked out, I think. It's on the Mishnah still, which is like back in 885 BCE. And this is actually even mentioned in 2 Kings 3, the war against Misha. So this was an actual thing, and you can see the word right here. Got two pointers to it because they had a pointer on there, but I was pulling from where it came from because I blew it up and that's where it actually came from. And there's the word Yahuwah right there. So there is documentation of that word as far back as this date. Here's more about the Mishnah still, ancient tablet. It was discovered in 1868 CE in the modern day Jordan and was published in 1870. It's the first extra-biblical inscription found to mention Yahuwah, which was made on the discovery of the steel reported the same event from the biblical narrative. It actually has that narrative on it too, on this stone. The major difference in the Moabite and the Christian claiming Israel was the winner. See, that they say that the way the Yahuwah line was interpreted further supported the concept of Yahuwah as the deity of the Israelites along, since Misha claims to have taken the Israelites' God's vessels as tribute to his own. So the actual battle is different on this writing than it is what we have in the text. This is something most people don't know, that the reference of Yahweh at Shorban is 500 years earlier than this Moabite stone. And it also refers to Yahweh in Egypt. And it is the earliest non-biblical occurrence of the name of Yahuwah. Even if Yahuwah is in the Egyptian text in a place that seems clear that such an area, city, or town was named after a Hebrew god. So a lot of people are claiming, because it's in this text, that this was named after him. But I don't think so. Yah, or Yah, was a lunar deity in ancient Egypt religion, and it simply means moon. And you can see all the variants. This is how it's transcribed, all the different ways it's transcribed, and this is what it looked like in the hieroglyphics. So this was probably, I would say, either copied from the Egyptians or from the ancient Romans, one of the two, and I'll show you why I say that on the Roman part. People have said a lot of things, but when I look at this, what this says to me is the hand of the man that nailed the man when I look at it. And everybody says it means, behold the nail, behold the hand. And that's actually, you would read it from right to left. So to me it means the hand of the man that nailed the man. And that's just me looking at it as, as an artist. If Yahuwah's only going to save Judah, which it looks like in all the prophets, then that means he's going to wipe out all but 0.2% of the world's population. Completely get rid of them, even though all three of these are considered the Abraham religions. But yet only 0.2 is Judah, 0.2%. That's just something to think about. There is a thing where in John 16:2, and it says, they will put you out of the synagogues. Indeed, the hour is coming when whoever kills you will think he is offering service to God. I think this is very true. This book is the Messianic Idea of Judaism by Gershom Scholem. And what it says is the Gentiles, who are designated as Esau or Edom, however, will suffer the opposite fate. They receive their light in this world in a single stroke, and it will depart from them gradually until Israel shall grow strong and destroy them. And when the spirit of uncleanness shall pass from the world, the divine light shall shine upon Israel without let or hindrance. All things will return to their proper order and the state of perfection which prevailed in the Garden of Eden before Adam sinned. And this is from the Zohar. This was hard for me because the people that are actually supposed to be his chosen people are actually I listened to Adam Green's videos on Odyssey, and they're actually planning on taking out all the Gentiles, or the Goim, and they think that they're either Esau or Amalek. And this was not just a few rabbis, this was tons of them, and they're mainstream people that are on YouTube all over the place. I literally reported some of them to YouTube because of the vile things they were plotting genocide. And it's not just one of them. I listened to one video of his, and there was like about 18 of them talking this way. And I think this is what he was talking about, that they're going to think they're doing what God wants, but they're going to be killing us. And they're bringing in what they call their Noahide stuff, and they're like 7 laws. One of them is, if you believe that Jesus or the Son of Man came, that you're an idol worshiper, and the penalty for that is decapitation. And I don't think people realize that. I mean, this may get me thrown off of YouTube. I don't think it will, because it's written on their websites, and they're talking about it openly, so I don't see why we can't talk about it openly. That's just my opinion. But it may get me thrown off of here, I don't know. This stuff coming from the Zohar, I can pretty much prove the Zohar was written by, it says Shimon, but I think it was Simon Peter. I think he wrote both. And why do I say that? Because when he denied the Son of Man, he was in the temple itself, in the courtyard. Back in that day and age, you did not go into the courtyard unless you were a high priest. And the Cleopas that prophesied that it was better for one man to die for a nation, then the whole nation be wiped out. That is the same name. It's just in Arabic as Kepha. So they were using the same names in the New Testament, but just different languages. And that's involved too, but I've got a whole nother video stacked up to do that on what is the real language. This all gets very complex, but when you look at the Zohar altar on the front of the book and then go look at St. Peter's Basilica, Peter's altar is exactly the same as the one on the Zohar book also. I'm going to do a whole video on exactly who is Simon Peter, because I think there's a lot that's been missing on that. I think he's been played out to be some dumb fisherman when he really was a high priest. And the high priest back in that day and age also held jobs. They weren't just specifically priests. I looked that up too because I was like, well, if he was a fisherman, could he have even been a high priest? And yeah, all of them had jobs, just like Paul was a tent maker, and he was a Pharisee priest. They all did. But I just thought this was interesting, and I want you to think about these things I'm saying. What do they mean? Why did he say them? And I think there's a big reason he said this one. Here's some more things. The Hebrew name, Yah, is known as the name of God since the Moses is Exodus in Egypt, and by that way the Egyptian moon god. I've already showed that. Here's one of their, where they're quoting that it's, oh Yah, the shining one. The word Hellel, which means shining one. The Hebrew word for moon itself is, they use Urak, but that's really another deity, saying it means crescent moon. I got this off another person's website. Yareko in Hebrew means the moon city, and so they prayed to the moon god. All through this thing you'll see, this is from the Egyptologist Wallace Berg,